Today we saw the release of the September quarter GDP figures from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and in the government's hopes that their tax relief would stimulate the economy appear to have been stymied. While GDP is up 0.4% through the quarter, it's down against the upwardly revised prior quarter's 0.6%, bringing the yearly total in at 1.7%. Now that's positive territory, but probably not as much as the government might hope. Treasurer Josh Frydenberg says GDP figures show the Australian economy is, quote, remarkably resilient as it faces international trade tensions and the drought. Well, let's not trust the Treasurer. Let's bring in some experts and hear what they have to say. Joining me now for our Wednesday economics panel, former Chief Economist to Prime Minister Tony Abbott, Andrew Stone, and author of a new book, and I'll hold that up in a minute, Restoring Hope, as well as columnist for the Herald Sun and the Australian, Terry McCrann. Now, Terry, these GDP numbers predictable, and should we be concerned, or pretty much business as usual, and we're looking forward to a strong retail performance come Christmas time?
Well, I think Josh Frydenberg deserves a shout-out because he came up with a great word to describe these figures, resilience, that the Australian economy is resilient. He couldn't obviously say the economy was running strongly, or any other really upbeat term. There's no surprise at all in these numbers. I guess you might be a little bit disappointed they went a little higher. But the economy, we know the economy's been running around this sort of growth rate, and we also know what's driving this sort of number, that we don't have strong consumer spending, we've got strong export growth, and we've got government spending. But the key ingredient that's missing is consumer spending and to a lesser extent investment spending. So having said that, I don't want to see the government panic. There is no magic button up there, Peter, next to the one which we can alter the world's temperature, where we can also alter the growth rate. I'm happy that the government doesn't rush to deliver some sort of 2009 type boost to the economy.
Okay, well, you look at all the sort of stimulatory measures the government's put out, this infrastructure spend not so long ago, obviously all the reaction to drought policy that's there. You've got these numbers, you've got the RBA hitting pause on Tuesday at their meeting in relation to the cash rate, further reductions in the cash rate. How do you think we're travelling, Andrew?
Well, the thing is, as Terry said, the economy is still subpar. Now, in part, that's factors like the drought are constraining a little bit, but the simple fact is we're not, growth of 1.7% through the year. It's a little better than it was through the year to the June quarter, but it's still inadequate. The key point, though, and you mentioned the RBA thankfully decided to stay on hold this just recently. The key point is this is not an issue of demand management. It's not an issue of saying the economy is a bit sluggish. We need to make sure that people borrow more so that they can go out and spend. That's essentially what either a fiscal stimulus or a monetary stimulus would be doing. If the RBA cuts the cash rate, they're basically saying we want people to go out and borrow more to spend. If people won't do that, they're saying quick, then the government's got to go out and spend, you borrow on their behalf. The trouble is we've got record Commonwealth net debt, and household debt is also extremely high, much higher in fact than it was pre-GFC. So the trouble is we borrowed ourselves out. To get better growth, we need structural reform, and Gary Banks, one of our most distinguished public servants of the last few decades, actually made this point. He said it's not a demand management issue. We need productivity boosting reforms that will actually affect the supply side of the economy if we're going to get that extra growth, which will then allow us we will have made the reforms that earn the income that we can then go and spend.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've written a book. We're going to have an interview with you, and I'll hold it up for people at home. Restoring Hope, fantastic mind Andrew Stone's got, but this is a book about basically all the parameters you can move to revitalise the economy. Yep. As I said, I'll get you back separately to talk about that book, but give me an example. Give me one thing that you would say the government should be doing that it's not.
An example, a key one which Terry has often spoken about is reforms to the energy markets in Australia, especially the electricity and gas markets. That's an area, unfortunately, where 20 years of Commonwealth meddling has made both those markets very considerably worse rather than better. But there are basic things that we can do that will get prices down and improve the reliability of supply. It's an extraordinary thing that in recent years we've had major statewide blackouts in South Australia and 6-month protracted periods of inadequate supply in Tasmania. And in recent years, big commercial and industrial users of gas have struggled on the East Coast to even get supply. These are disastrous outcomes, but they are things that policy can do something about. And they're some of the things I talk about along with federal-state relations reform and other things. Yeah.
Terry, you know, looking at those educational data sets out today to show how badly Australia is performing, put literacy to one side, but numeracy and science literacy as well. Is it any wonder kids coming out of school filled with climate claptrap? You can't reason with them on this debate, you know, you can't have a sensible discussion about energy.
Well, I mean, I agree with everything that Andrew was saying, that unless we actually start to want to grow fast, unless we actually want to start to make the changes, whether it's in the education space, the energy space, or generally the whole red tape space, we're not going to. It's not going to happen. And I think it's extraordinary that we just sort of sit here frozen, immobile, as if nothing can be done about it, as if this is imposed by God or Gaia on us, that we can't actually command our own fate. These are all issues which we can control. These are all outcomes which we can deliver, and it's a failure, I guess, of, you know, across the spectrum, the education space, the media space, obviously the political space. These are not things that we can't solve.
Well, we'll come back and we'll keep solving them every Wednesday with two great minds on this show. Terry McCrann, Andrew Stone, thanks very much for your time.